You see, they're here to give what you need, solve all your problems, plan success like a seed. They're the company that's got the perfect. Good afternoon, everybody, from South Africa and around the world. My name is Nathan Rowe. I'm a learning and development specialist here at Yellow Seed Consulting. And today we're talking about unlocking team effectiveness, right? Navigating communication, collaboration, and culture in today's workplace. A great topic that I'm sure everyone is going to benefit from, because as we know, the world of work is constantly becoming new. The new world of work, and every day it's newer than it was yesterday. So in this dynamic landscape, effective teamwork stands as the cornerstone of organizational success. Yet achieving optimal team performance is often easier said than done. You know, we haven't all nailed it 100%, especially amidst the evolving challenges of remote work and dispersed teams. So yeah, welcome to our webinar on unlocking team effectiveness, where we're going to delve into the critical aspects of communication, collaboration, and culture that drive high-performing teams. So let us meet our panelists for today. First up, we have Megan Biffy, who is a people and culture specialist. So Megan, I don't know if you'd like to just introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers.
Hi, everyone. It's lovely to meet you all. As Nathan said, my name is Megan Biffy. You're welcome to call me Megs. Most people do. I'm actually a registered industrial and organizational psychologist, but I am working as a people and culture specialist at Exnilo, which is a web hosting company here in Cape Town. In a nutshell, my role is about enabling our business to make sure that our people are a competitive advantage. I'm very happy to be here and to be part of this discussion.
Thank you so much, Megan. Next up, we have Ntsiki Dlepu, who is the executive head at Human Capital. So Ntsiki, the stage is yours. Please introduce yourself.
Afternoon, everyone. Oh my goodness, I'm overwhelmed. There are so many people here today. My name is Ntsiki. I am the executive head of HR at the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in the Val, not in the US. I have been in the HR space for more than 20 years. I'm not sure as to how I have managed to stay for so long. And I have also just been, involved in most of, the functions within HR. And this is a topic that is very dear to my heart. And quite recently, I have been working with the team at Yellow Seed to implement and roll out globally within the organization. So I'm looking forward to the conversations this evening. Thank you so much, Nathan.
Great. Thank you so much, Ntsiki. Welcome. And then we have Peggy Myrna, who is all the way from not South Africa, judging by her accent, and she is a coaching content consultant at Cloverleaf. Peggy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. I think the panel is so full of wisdom. I cannot wait to hear what gets talked about. I'm with Cloverleaf, which is an automated coaching tool based on your personality assessment. So my role there is kind of like a technology product manager for the coaching content, all of the dozen assessments we work with and the 120 traits that embodies. And I take that personality science and I turn it into little nudges of information that you get to consume when you need it. You can go pull it from Cloverleaf's database, and we have like a Google search bar that you can ask, how do I better communicate with Sam? And we also email it to you so that you are getting little drips of information about what makes you so excellent, how to use that today, and something about someone on your team or people that you're going to be meeting with if you've integrated your calendar. And then I also work with our users. I work with large enterprise organizations that are trying to be better for each other so that they can drive the business results they want. And I also work with our users, could be high growth entrepreneurs, to do research on what kind of problems can we solve for you inside of your teams if you understood yourself really well and if you came to understand and appreciate your team as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here, Peggy. Really appreciate it. And then last but not least, we have the Storm in a Teacup, Storm Bellotto, who's our Senior People Development Consultant here at Yellowseed. Storm, won't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Nathan, and thank you to everybody on the call. Really looking forward to spending the later afternoon with everyone. Nathan mentioned people development, so with a special focus and interest on team development specifically and individuals within those teams, figuring out, staying on top of how we can keep them engaged, working most effectively, and really all around just bringing the best out of individuals in that space.
Fantastic. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all of you that have come and logged on for this webinar, and all those people watching after the fact. So let's jump right into some questions. So I'm going to throw this first one to Megan, or Megs, as you prefer. This first question, I sort of want to understand the impact of communication breakdowns on team effectiveness, because that happens a lot in teams. You know, there's this breakdown in communication and people go in different directions. So, Megs, I was wondering if you can share an experience where a communication breakdown negatively impacted team effectiveness, and maybe what are some of the common causes of communication breakdowns within teams?
Great. I think I'm going to start with the example. So post the pandemic, our organization transitioned and transformed from a fully in-office business to a hybrid workplace. And in terms of communication breakdown, what I've often observed in our organization is what we often term the bystander effect. So for those who are not familiar with the bystander effect, I want you to imagine a busy street in Tokyo, okay? You witness a pedestrian cross the busy street, and unfortunately, they're hit by a moving vehicle. Given that the street is busy and you are not the only witness, there are many. There is an assumption made that someone is going to call the ambulance, right? But no one does, because there's so many witnesses and everyone assumes that someone's going to call this ambulance. So the same phenomenon happens at our organization. So at our organization, we utilize Slack as our primary communication tool. You can use Slack to send messages directly to people or start group conversations. What has happened in the past is we have had people reach out to groups on Slack asking for support on a task, to have the task asking for support on a task, only to have the task left unattended to, as there were assumptions made that someone on the group would jump on the task, but nobody actually did. And in the end, this led to delays and hindered team effectiveness. Slack is the example I use, but this could be group emails, lots of examples where a message is sent out, there's no clear call to action, and there's no clear understanding of who's supposed to action it, and leads to delay, and team effectiveness is hindered. Then to answer your question about what are some common causes of communication breakdowns within teams, examples that come to mind for me is language barriers. So I work in an organization where we're predominantly South African, but there's also Ukrainian and Indian software developers. And some of them have really strong accents, or English is not their first language. So when you communicate with them, you know, active listening is very important. Or there's different methods that we can use. I don't want to go into solution mode, but let's just say Google Meet has this awesome subtitle functionality that sometimes can really help if you really don't understand. Another thing is lack of feedback and active listening. So often when people, again, you send out a message and there's no clear call to action, sometimes people don't close the feedback loop. So again, assumptions are made that it's been done, but you don't actually know, so you have to keep following up. Other barriers are communication overload and information overload. So post-pandemic, I think a lot of companies were still figuring out how to communicate, which channels to use. And sometimes you find people sending multiple messages over email, Slack, and it's just all coming at you, and it's just so much of it, and you don't know what to prioritize over the next thing. So that leads to a lot of communication breakdowns. And then the last thing that also comes to my mind is misunderstanding due to unclear instructions. So again, I think a lot of us have had to refine our communication skills, especially in a hybrid environment, because you're not sitting next to a person and you can tap them on the shoulder and say, listen, I want to explain this to you. You need to figure out how to clearly explain something so that they know what they need to do, and by when and all of that. So I think we've all become a lot better at that, but that's definitely a lot of things that I've seen in my space.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I want to tag on.
Yes, please, Peggy, please.
Yeah,
jump in there.
I want to tag on to what Meg said with that very last thing where she talked about clearly explain what you need. And people actually consume information differently. Some people need the larger concept first and the big picture before you drill down to details. And some people need the details. What are the dates? What's the specific task? What is the timeline? What, like the big deadline? And then also the milestones that I need to commit to. So understanding which one people need helps you to unconsciously build trust with them by delivering them what they need before they even ask for it. Also, they may not know that that's what they need. And that is information that comes from 16 types or Myers-Briggs, and it has to do with your cognitive habits. And then if you can deliver them the information that they need to draw to a decision, which is either people impact, values, how you are going to improve the life of your customer, your team, your audience, your leadership, that helps them to understand what is most critical for them to make a good decision. And also, if they are really logically, they're thinkers, giving them the step-by-step execution process, or what the past precedent has been, the evidence of how you're going to execute this task or this idea, that will get that person's buy-in. So understanding what people need, it builds trust, it increases their ability to receive and give their buy-in. And you can also, what you need is a decision or action, it helps them to know exactly what's needed for them to serve you or give you the agreement or action that you're looking for.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. I'm just thinking what's come to mind is quite easily lost in translation, right? As often as we speak to individuals, we're giving instruction or sharing sharing what the responsibility is part of a project. And we often got team members on the other end saying, right, got it, nodding their head, but in that communication, it's almost lost because of the deeper understanding what specifically that person might need in terms of structure of how that message is delivered, or the bigger picture that might allow them to run with it. So definitely, and with data insights like that, I think it can help leaders 100% align better and facilitate some of that conversation a bit better.
Can I just add, Megan started talking about, COVID and the lockdown, and in terms of how people worked during that time. So before lockdown, everyone is in the office, you know as to how to relay the message, you set your expectations, and you are comfortable with that. And I don't think that we appreciated the effects of COVID when we're in COVID, because now people's preferences differed, and we're in such a hurry to make sure that things happened. If we were to ask me back then in 2020 to arrange a meeting via Zoom, I would not have been able to do it. And then you expect someone who's not technological savvy to do that within a very short period of time. And it goes back to people not being equipped, to use technology. And also, there is that whole thing, when you are working with somebody face to face, it's very easy for you to give the instruction because you understand the person. But when a person is not near you and you want something to be done, there's something in transactional analysis, right, that says that, there is a parent, there's an adult, and there's a child. And I think that most people got frustrated because in the process of learning, other people felt like children because the parent would give an instruction, that would just say, do it as I want it because I've got a deadline. So going forward, I think that we are trying now to master this whole thing of understanding people as to where they are. So we're meeting them where they are instead of, talking down on them. And I think that they will do things, because I think that is where we got the backlash. Thank you.
Thank you, Nsiki. So I love what you guys are saying about really understanding the people that you're working with to really understand what they need from you so that you can, deliver what they need and understand where they're coming from, as to Nsiki's point now. So I'm going to throw this question to Peggy, but obviously everyone can jump on. I wanted to find out, how do we get to know the people in our team? How do we really get to know what they require from us and how they require it? And then also, just what can the organizations do to foster a sense of unity and belonging among team members so that they can share parts of themselves with their co-workers and allow people to not assume things about them, but really get to know them?
I have seen some organizations go really advanced with this, and they created a user manual. Like, it would be my responsibility to create a user manual for me. This is how I like my information. This is when I want to, this is my standard for conducting our one-on-ones. This is when I want to be having these kinds of meetings, because I know I'm most productive at giving feedback in the afternoons. So you can do that. It's extremely almost like intentional to do that. And then I also think on the simplest, easiest way to make sure that you are understanding is asking for feedback at the end of every engagement. Do you have what you need? Could I have communicated that better? Is there a way that you would like me to adjust these requests in the future? So you are just creating a standard that our give and take is open. This is an open line of communication, because the worst thing you can do is erode trust. It sabotages your ability to communicate effectively. If you don't trust in a relationship, you will never air a concern. Well, not never. You are less likely to air a concern or share your honest opinion if you do not trust that you are seen, valued, and when you speak, you are heard and understood. So I think everything you want to do is creating little micro interactions on the smallest way, where you are creating trust and you're reinforcing it is okay to be open, it's okay to be creative. And when you have some violations of trust, addressing it quickly and specifically. And that tiny little conflict of a boundary overstepped can actually build relationship and build trust and strengthen your ability to have productive and fruitful interactions with each other. Even if they're awkward, just plan. It is going to be awkward. So when you are uncomfortable, you are like, this is just the way I thought it was going to be. And it just gives you so much more freedom. But trust and psychological safety are hand in hand. Creating belonging, I think, man, it used to be 1 in 5 statements you could deliver critical feedback, which meant you had to have 4 positive statements for every critical. And I just read an article that said in recent generations, they have seen a shift that it is 1 in 20, which means, how are you doing today? Did you have a good commute into work? Has it been a good morning? Like, those affirmative interactions are necessary if what you want to say is, I need you to tighten up your content and I need you to cut down this report by 50% because it isn't clear. We aren't getting the message effectively. You have to have built equity in that relationship, built the trust that you can make that withdrawal.
Nathan, I want to agree with Peggy. And what usually happens is that we miss a step of understanding one another, right, in the relationship. And we always think that it's a top-down or, down-top approach. But I think that in order for you to be able to get that buy-in so that you can be able to work well with your team, you need to understand and know them. And it takes a very long time for you to get to know your team, not unless you've got a very small team. And as we know, people are very, very different. And unfortunately, in the workplace, when we're talking about diversity, we think that diversity just relates to color, right, gender, and so forth. But we forget that different people do things differently, right? Our opinions are different. And if you do not listen to somebody's opinion, no matter how small it is, right, as a leader, you must know that you'll be faced with some conflict because everyone wants to be heard. And then we've got minority people, right? We've got those that are in the minority. Those people want to feel as though they belong, like Peggy has indicated. So when you speak to them, right, speak to them as if they belong. And that stems from what I said earlier to say that invest in making sure that you understand your people. There's a very beautiful tool that Cloverleaf has here that's called Enneagram. There were times when I was in denial of my own personality before when I started using Enneagram, but it is very spot on. And now I get to understand as to how I react when I am in a certain state. And that helps me to understand other people as well. Because if I don't understand them, we'll always have this conflict. So if you want to create an inclusive space, you must be cognizant of, everything, personality. If there's a mismatch in personality and you don't know as to how to handle it, it means that you might never win as an organization. And I'm not saying that we need to win, but what we need to take those small steps, in order for us to get to the point where we are able to meet each other halfway. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I just want to piggyback a bit on what was said earlier about trust. I was fortunate enough to attend a workshop by Salman Sinek last year, and one of the things that messages that I took home from that workshop was that trust isn't scalable. So what I mean by that is, if I trust Peggy, that doesn't mean that Peggy trusts me or trusts Storm. We have to build our relationship on a one-on-one basis. And that's the only way you build trust. And I think when it comes to unity and a sense of belonging, Peggy's right. We have to put the time in to those relationships and nurture and build those relationships, through team buildings or one-on-one conversations that we talk about non-work related things. Because once we build trust, I think there's a sense of grace that we get. When we stumble through feedback, when we talk through things that are uncomfortable, we get given a bit of benefit of a doubt. So there's more positive intent when we're given that grace. And I think that allows us to feel more a sense of belonging and less a sense of being judged or dismissed easily. The other thing I wanted to just bring up is that something else that's been fostering a lot of unity and a sense of belonging in our workplace is that we often encourage teamwork by assigning group projects or tasks and opportunities to people. So we have teams work on collective goals. So we do things like we have task teams that work on a particular project and they come together. They might be multidisciplinary teams and they work on a project together. We do things called hack days where we have software developers from different teams come together and they work and innovate on different projects. We have also called pair programming. So software developers will pair together and they work on a piece of code together. All of this, for me and for our organization, helps us build unity and a sense of belonging because they're doing things together and towards a collective goal. So those are some other practical examples of how to create unity and belonging.
Beautiful. I was just thinking when Ziki was talking about the Enneagram, how as an Enneagram 9, saying no to people is very difficult for me. But what I've learned through working towards integration on it, is that a no is actually putting a boundary in place. It's actually putting a line item in that user manual of how to approach you. Saying a no, or a yes for that matter, gives people information on how to interact with you and how to deliver that message. Guys, I want to jump into psychological safety, which we spoke a little bit about earlier, but I really want to talk about how a team leader can create that environment of psychological safety, because it almost, I see culture trying things all the time. We got a ball pit, but does the ball pit give you psychological safety? We do hang gliding every Friday. Does that make people feel psychologically safe? So how can leaders create a psychologically safe space? And secondly, how can you recognize when the psychological safety is not quite there yet and it needs work? So I think I'm going to throw this one to Ntsiki, if that's cool.
That is fine. I think I've spoken a bit, about this one. So in terms of leaders making sure that they create this, there are so many ways, but we don't tap into them. As I said, in an organization, every little piece of input should be taken into account, because if you don't take it into account, people will feel as though they do not belong, or they are not safe to raise issues that they need to raise. And there needs to be a way in which we receive those as leaders, and also just give feedback to employees in an organization. Otherwise, what happens is that if we don't create those spaces, people tend to be disengaged, and we don't want to work with a disengaged workforce. And also, you find out that there is high staff turnover. People leave the organization if they do not feel as though they belong, or if they feel as though they are not safe to raise whatever that they want to raise. As I said, there needs to be a lot of communication and feedback. I said this earlier, because people prefer to do things differently. So as an organization or leaders, we need to be able to cultivate a space that is safe for people by making sure that we're improving on that communication as well as feedback. We need to offer training and support, right? We need to coach and mentor people so that they can be confident, right? Or so that they can build confidence, especially when they are not able to raise issues that they need to raise. And also, I think it was Peggy who spoke about, making sure that we foster a culture of trust and transparency. Because if there is no transparency, if someone, say, I'm just going to make an example, if someone raises their hand during a team meeting and you feel that the response is not appropriate, I'm not a firm believer that you need to respond to that person in a negative way. But what we can do is to make sure that you take that person by the hand and you give them feedback in a manner in which they can understand it, so that they can be able to build, a certain level of confidence, and so that they can be able to trust you in future. So that is my 2 cents worth of input. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ntsiki. Any of the other ladies want to comment on maybe how to recognize when that psychological safety is not quite there?
Yeah, I think if you have a spirit of criticism, that can be a real killer. And I just did this last week. I was moaning about something that I was the criticizer in a meeting, and I just have an epic leader, and she did not correct me. She changed the direction of the conversation, and it became not about my frustration. It was about, what are you learning in this process and what can you control to change the outcome here? And she just took it to a place of learning and really pushed on a growth mindset. And for managers, the things to be doing to be building this growth mindset and a culture of learning, it is not rocket science. It's what we already know. You set your one-on-ones. You give feedback on the very regular basis to your team. You publicly recognize them and celebrate them for what they are doing well, and also their character and what they value and how they work. So things that are innate to them, you celebrate those in public as well. And like I had that leader do in my conversation, it is saying, what did you learn when there are mistakes, as opposed to, we can never let this happen again. What happened? Like, this was terrible. So in those disappointments or possible failures, always be asking, what are you learning and what are we going to change in the future? Do not criticize what has already happened. Talk about now and forward.
And I think on that, great points, Peggy, because it really goes into my point here was really about getting leaders involved. So stepping down and getting involved, having those one-on-ones, getting involved with the team members themselves. In a couple of the team interventions that I've seen play out, we've got a great culture amongst the team members, and they're really openly sharing and have really strong relationships. But the psychological safety going above is where the barrier is, right? And so breaking through that and having the leader actually step down into the position there, share a bit more about themselves, engage quite regularly, really pay an ear out to what's being said, and supporting each member as it is, through that deliberate time spent with them. Like Peggy's mentioned, a couple of to-dos that you could potentially do, but in essence, having the leader really bring themselves into that team space and share with the team members themselves, I think is huge, in just role modeling some of the behavior that would be expected, that is supportive and encouraging of that.
Yeah, I just want to add as well that I think it's great that there's lots of ideas that we can explore when it comes to building psychological safety in teams. I do want to always encourage that we ask the team what they need to feel psychologically safe, because often the teams, it might take time to uncover that, but they know what they need. And what I also want to point out is, so an exercise we do at the organization, I don't know if some of you are familiar, but there's actually stages of psychological safety. So Kaylee Creel put a comment in the chat there. And we sometimes ask our teams, at what level of psychological safety do they feel like? Are they at learner safety, inclusive safety? And there's different characteristics that speak to what those levels or stages are. And we're trying to build them to challenger safety, because challenger safety is where it's the highest level of psychological safety in a team. It's where ideas are not shut down. You can challenge the status quo, you can innovate, there's risk taking. It's really about pushing the boundaries. And we keep trying to find ways to get to that space. And yes, every team is going to be at different levels based on, Tuckman's team development, storming, norming, all of that. But I do think sometimes start with asking the team what they need, and finding ways to meet those needs will create that environment for them.
Brilliant. Thank you, ladies. I love what Peggy commented in the chat here. You are building or eroding psychological safety. Our actions are not neutral. I love that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that gives everyone a good idea. Let's move on to conflict resolution. So in a team, that's often way more difficult than just between two people. Why is it more difficult in a team? Why does it take so long? Why does it take so much time investment? And why is it important to solve that problem as quickly as possible? Storm, I'm going to throw this one to you.
John, I don't know which questions to start at. You gave me a mouthful. But our conflict, if you want to start at that, conflict is not necessarily negative, right? Sometimes we need conflict to brainstorm. Some of the creativity comes from solutioning. So in that point, I think conflict is necessary, but the way in which we position it and engage with it is obviously quite important. And considering we want to mitigate conflict, I'm going to focus on what can cause a lot of conflict. Is so we can go back to communication, where there's a lack of communication or it being ineffective, causing really a lack in understanding, maybe roles and responsibility of work that needs to be done. And so doing tasks as part of a project. So if we look at a project team, for example, doing tasks as part of that, there's no certainty of who's doing what. There's a bit of frustration because we're working on different pieces, we're pulling in different directions and not getting further here, or dropping balls or covering up cracks. So again, leading to the frustration that is normally the consequence thereof then, and having to go back and address and figuring out what the root of that was, right? Which can be quite impossible sometimes. But having said that, we do need to keep in mind that we have to also be mature enough to move past it at the end, to resolve it effectively, to manage the relationships we have as part of the team, but also to become better and effective at it. So yeah, there's many ways in which we could possibly look at resolving it. I often like to refer to, and by the time we step in, there's been conflict and there's a bit of a dynamic going on in the team, but we always like going back to understanding ourselves again. So I left the notes in the chat about, yes, understanding our team, and we know that Nsiki is great at what she does, and Megan might be good at what she does, and they have different skills in that space. But let's understand them better again. Let's understand how we need to communicate them. So maybe writing a bit of that user manual with individuals. So we like pulling on data from all sort of data points, so assessments, 360s, whatever the case might be, and just putting it together in real personal practice. Right, well, this is how, when I need to deliver a message again, engaging with Nsiki, this is where her values are at. And so when she behaves as X, Y, and Z, I can understand that because I know a little bit more. So that really just helps touching on some of what might cause for that frustration, which then urges on the conflict that we can see in teams.
If I can add to that, I agree with you, Storm. Conflict is not always a bad thing. And that is why when we hire people that are very different. Because if we're to agree with everything, I don't think that would be able to achieve what we need to achieve. But when it becomes unhealthy, right, that is where we see that, there's disruption. And the topic today is about organizational effectiveness. So if there is unhealthy conflict that is perpetual, what it means is that the organization will spend a lot of time, right, on resolving conflict. So we need to be, as leaders, we need to be very proactive in terms of how we intervene, or how we intervene, and make sure that we try to work, with people so that they see conflict as a way of, being, but at the same time understand that if it's unhealthy, it's not going to take the organization anywhere. So one of the things that you can actually do is I think the tools they are very easy tools that you can use when you can see that there is conflict. You allow people that are in conflict, if they can speak together, right, to try to resolve it amongst themselves, especially when we're in a professional environment. I always say that if you have to spend time, right, say for instance, there's conflict between me and Megan, we're in the same team, and Peg is my line manager, and you bring in Storm, there are 4 people, right, that you are pulling away from their desks, and you bring them to the boardroom to say that they must resolve conflict. If we were to quantify that, right, it can amount to a lot of money. So what we do is we make sure that in our recruitment processes, we get to understand people a little bit better, right? There are personality assessments that we do, so that even if a person comes in and that they are different, we understand them. And number 2, when we bring them on board, you need to make sure that they are aligned to the values. And as you know, people do misrepresent themselves. But when they're in the organization, there are those tools that you can use. And someone's emphasize the issue of communication. When you identify that conflict, when you identify it, make sure that you deal with it heads on instead of waiting as the line manager, or ask the two to work together, or use the tools that are available to ensure that you mitigate conflict. Because in my experience, if you let it perpetuate, it might involve a lot of people. So friends, colleagues from other departments can be part of this conflict. So the sooner you resolve the conflict, the better. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nsiki. I'm getting a strong theme here of changing the meaning of conflict from being a negative to being a positive thing. And almost, so when you said dealing with it head on, it's almost steering the conflict in the right direction as well, so that it can be effective in the organization as a positive. Because no one likes the idea of conflict, but if we change sort of the meaning in our own minds, I think that'd be great.
Nathan,
Becky, do you want to? Oh, sorry. Yes,
sorry,
Megan.
Nathan. I just want to add to that. It's like, I think so. Building relationships is crucial, but the real test of the relationship is how someone navigates conflict. If you're able to walk through conflict in a healthy way and come out the other end, and your relationship is stronger for it, that's the successful outcome we want. And so for me, I get excited when there's conflict, because that's really going to test the relationship and be like, okay, where else do we need to strengthen? What else do I need to work on? It's like being in a marriage. I mean, when it's going good in a marriage, it's going good. But it's when it's difficult, that's when you really need to pull on your strategies, your techniques. How are you going to navigate this together? And that's when you start to see the magic.
Thank you. And I see Peggy's written a whole technique in there for you, hey, in the chat section. So Peggy, I don't know if you just want to talk through that. Great to have it in writing as well, but it's a great practical thing that you can apply.
Also, a comment on what Meg said. If in the DISC assessment, the D's and I's often see conflict as productive to get to a destination. It's almost like a competitive mindset. Like, why do I work out and put myself through this stress so I can run faster in my next race? So that is exciting for some people because it is so fruitful. And for others, they will flip into primal survival mode and see it as a predator against their standard of excellence, against the harmony or peace they are trying to maintain. And it can feel, a scheduling issue could feel like an existential crisis where they might die. So just because I enjoy it because I think it's fruitful and we are going to be better together on the other side of this, does not mean that other person is showing up in the same way. They may be terrified and they've been sweating for the last 2 hours and they haven't slept in 2 days either. But I use the conflict approach, and we will talk about it. This is based on Enneagram typing, because I cannot get people in the same space aligned, moving through addressing the problem to the opportunity to the execution of a solution if I don't bring them through that. The reactives, the people that want to talk about the problem, if I do not thoroughly acknowledge that you are frustrated, you just lost a third of your budget, but you are still being held to the same deadlines and outputs. If I don't give them the feeling word and restate what they said, they will think I did not hear them. And they will cope by getting louder and more aggressive. And saying things like, I heard you, does not acknowledge them. So if you want them to move on to opportunities with you, you have to acknowledge where they are and state the problem. I have, in some meetings I've been in, when it came to stating a clear problem, I have gotten 5 different problems from each of the 5 participants. And that is why their outcomes were never satisfying what they were hoping for, because everybody had a different goal. And that was not even realized, but they hadn't stopped to define the problem first. So that just helps with alignment, and it is really helpful if everyone knows that you're going to be walking through that. And if you know your Enneagram type, understanding the part that you're really good at can help you appreciate being in the part you don't want to be in.
This is something different, Nathan, if you allow me. I think in this platform currently, we need to acknowledge that we've got 4 generations. Someone did speak about 4 generations that do things differently, right? That have been educated differently, that have been trained differently. And I do not think that we have prepared ourselves enough, right, for the latest generation or the second last generations. There is always that notion that if you've been, like I said, I've been in HR for a long time, meaning that I've been working for a long time, and that when a new person comes with their ideas, new person coming straight from school, we have a tendency, I'm going to include myself because I'm a culprit of saying that this is how things have been done in here, in this organization. This is how I've always, done things. I think what we need to teach ourselves is to get to understand that different generations do things differently. And we need to try to, meet each other halfway. Because if we, it goes back to that whole issue of inclusion. If the younger generation feel that their, their views, opinions are not taken into account, they are very ready to start, some conflict. Vice versa. If I feel that, a young one does not want to understand me, doesn't want to do things the way I want to do because I'm used to doing things in a certain way, you must know that there is going to be conflict. So the sooner, right, we get to understand each other in the workplace and also accommodate each other. And I've heard someone saying that the older generation is better in terms of accommodating the younger ones, but I'm not sure about the younger ones. But surely it's because of the experience and, the wisdom and the road that we have traveled. So we need to acknowledge that, because if we shut them out, they are going to create a storm. And the storm is going to always lead us to conflict, and we do not want that. Thank you.
Storm, would you like to defend yourself?
Thank you, Nathan. I love that.
White flag.
We've got some conflict and the conflict with joking. Thank you so much, Nsiki. Yeah, that's such an important point about generations. And I mean, one of our clients that we recently worked with has 5 generations working at their company, which is must be quite a struggle, actually, just the different mindsets of those people coming from such different angles. I want to talk a little bit about role clarity now, because this is another thing that causes a lot of stress, especially for South Africans. So South Africans have this way of working that we almost can do everything, and we do. Someone's not doing their job, we're going to do it for them. We have a missing role here. I'll just step in and do that person's role as well. And I know this has caused conflict overseas quite a bit, because there are many countries, Japan, they've got a famous saying that says, the nail that sticks out must be hammered down. In New Zealand and Australia, they call it tall poppy syndrome, where if you grow too high or work too hard or step on people's toes, you don't get the respect you get in South Africa for being able to do it all. So let's talk a little bit about role clarity and even bring in some of the generational stuff, if you feel. Megan, can I throw this one to you?
Yeah, you're welcome to. So I think role clarity promotes alignment, autonomy, and accountability in teams. If team members have clarity and are aligned on what their roles and responsibilities are, they're empowered to execute with autonomy and confidently take accountability while working towards achieving a collective goal. But there is often a lot of role ambiguity, I think, in many people's spaces. And I think when team members are unsure about their tasks, expectations, or authority, they may feel confused, frustrated, or threatened. And they may also overlap or duplicate or interfere with each other's work, resulting in inefficiencies, waste, or even conflict, which we've just spoken about. So I think, to prevent role ambiguity, we should always define and communicate the roles and responsibilities of each team member clearly and regularly. Because I think we forget that I don't think we should assume alignment happens once in someone's role. Things change, and we should always, touch base with a person to make sure that they're always aligned when changes happen. And we should also review and update roles as the team evolves, ensure that they're aligned with the team's goals and strategy at all times. So I think those are some of the things that I would really take into consideration when it comes to role ambiguity. But I agree with you. I think there is a drive in some organizations in South Africa to do more with less. And what happens there is what you just explained, where people are asked to do more and their role becomes more and more unclear because they're just taking more and more on. And there's no clarity about where the boundaries lie. And that can lead to multiple problems. So, yeah. Anyone else want to add?
I have a
I'm going to take it. Oh, sorry, Peggy.
super quick. I have a study, or Google did a study, Aristotle, trying to figure out why only 30% of projects are delivered on time and on budget. And their number one indicator of success for a team is psychological safety. But in the top 5 is role and goal clarity. So it is very important, but the most important is the psychological safety. Go ahead, Nsiki.
While we're talking about role ambiguity and clarity, I also want us to explore this whole thing of cross-functional teams, because that is, where we're going to now, especially, with technology doing most of, some of the work that is done by human beings. So if you work in a cross-functional team, I think at this stage, because we're still not sure as to how to manage this, I think that is where we're going to have problems, especially if there is no accountability where line management is concerned, right? So you may find that somebody is in a project that cuts across different teams, and how do we deal with it to, and make sure that the person or the individuals are accountable to the right managers. Do you understand? Because if you are saying that you're going to work in a project and you're going to report to 4 people, sometimes as managers we do drop the ball a little, and some and an employee feels sometimes very frustrated because there is no one who's accountable for their performance. Not all the managers are on the same wavelength in terms of giving them feedback. Communication is sometimes not up to standard, and someone is not very clear about their role. And it could be that we're trying to pull this person because of their expertise and their passion, right? And we've got those people that are very passionate about, jobs, about, doing anything that can take anything. But when we're talking about work-life balance, we also need to think about it as we go into the stage of saying that people should work across teams. And the question is, how do we manage this to make sure that people do not feel kind of exhausted, in the process? So line managers or managers and leaders have a role to play. And performance management tools are there. But the question is, are we using them correctly to make sure that their role ambiguity thing is sorted? Thank you.
Beautiful. Yes. Peggy in the comments says a manager's version of the bystander effect is someone else will do it, which I believe was Homer Simpson's campaign slogan when he ran for mayor. Can't someone else do it? So, yeah, be wary as a team leader that it's your responsibility to make sure those boundaries are there, which give your team psychological safety. Wonderful. I'm wondering if we should maybe ask the audience if there's any questions that they're just dying to ask you guys, because we have been chatting for an hour. So if anyone has a question, won't you pop it in the chat? And then we will hopefully see it.
And also, if you know who you want to answer the question.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Go ahead and say who you want to have feedback on or from.
Just going back to staying in your lane, what do you guys think is the better approach? Because there's definitely something to be said for both those alternatives where the lines are blurry and someone can step into another role quite easily, or if it's rigid and you don't have to step into someone else's role is also quite wonderful. Is there, I mean, I don't think you're ever going to get the perfect balance of that. I'm sure some people have, really made that their objective in the organization to not let those boundaries be crossed, but that also might stunt someone's potential growth. I don't know if you guys want to comment on that.
Interesting. I think that there's so many factors that would need to be taken into consideration. People's preferences. I mean, you get individuals who love variety and they don't want to have the same day every day. And give me, I think my one of my favorite leaders, he's on the call, his name's Rob Fowler. He always says that his day's like a Smartie box. He gets to open it up and he loves the variety. And if you had to take that away from him, I think you'd be very upset. But then you get others in my space who they love their lane, and please don't let them, like, they don't want to get out of their lane, like they will stay there. And then there are some generational differences. I think you do get some baby boomers who that's just how they've operated since they, left school until they retire at the same organization. But again, that's also quite a generalized comment. And then you get the younger generation coming up where I think they love to be jack of all trades. They love this being able to cross skill and upskill and yeah. So I think it's really a lot of multifaceted things that we'd have to take into consideration.
Brilliant. Thanks, Megs. So we have a question here from Michelle Faree. It says, from your experience, what has been the most prevalent team issues or situations? In other words, what are the most common requests you have received for team interventions? I'm not sure, that's not directed to anyone. So if anyone has an answer for her, please jump in.
Mine has been managing conflict. How, especially on teams that don't do conflict, they just sort of shove it down and keep on going, because how that bubbles up is resentment and lack of trust if you continue doing that for a long time. So they didn't have a track record of having healthy, constructive conflict with each other and giving them a perspective. Using Cloverleaf, it's super easy because I can say it's not Peggy versus Nathan. This is Peggy's dominance that is competing against Nathan's conscientiousness. Or this is Peggy's desire for growth competing against Nathan's desire for harmony and connectedness on the team. So when you make it about these traits and how each are good, but they can fight against each other, it can change the conversation. It lowers the temperature and moves it into a really open, collaborative, constructive place. But they don't know how to do that. They haven't done it.
Brilliant.
And I'm thinking, no, so often our call for team interventions come from our team leaders saying, our team's not performing, they're not delivering as they should, we've hit the mark here, we've missed the mark here. And sometimes what we generally do is we run a bit of a diagnostics, and to Peggy's notes is that conflict. There's there's a dynamic playing out that's erred on from a sort of conflict, a miscommunication, and getting to the bottom line of that basically. And using a lot of the data from Cloverleaf and Enneagram and those assessments to really just get back to the basics of who we are and how we work together. But yeah, so a lot of that, those nuances are missed because it's that my team's not performing. I don't know what to do. How do I get them to perform? But through a diagnostic, you can really unpack what exactly the issues are and then target that specifically.
Yeah, and sometimes you can also see the difference in the answers from the employees to the team leader. Sometimes the team leader thinks everything is disastrous and the team thinks they're doing amazing, and that's just a communication problem. Peggy, sorry, you do have a question directed at you. It says, sometimes there is one member of the team sapping the energy of the rest due to their negativity and pessimism. I'd like to hear from Peggy any insight on how to handle that. That's from Mornay Bester.
Yeah, I have two thoughts, Mornay. One is it a values violation? Can you call the team to a higher standard? And then I would be addressing the violation in private and saying, hey, when like Peggy, when we have a 30-minute meeting and you spent 15 railing on, I would not say railing. I would say that to me. I would not say this to another person. When you spent 15 minutes talking about that other department's shortcomings, that actually did not continue to build a culture of curiosity. So is there a way that we can handle that going forward? What can I help you with so that we are, for the team, creating a culture of curiosity? If you have that concern, you speak to me directly, and we will find a way to turn it into curiosity as opposed to bitterness and anger. And I am suspicious that when that's happening, that person should go to whoever they're angry with, as opposed to talking about it in a public setting. So if there is a specific grievance, it should be handled one-on-one before it's ever aired in a public setting. And then you can escalate to your leader. It shouldn't be negative chatter. If that is not the issue, possibly back to that conflict approach that I talked about, they feel unheard. And they are just stating it again and again and again because they think you don't understand them. So stopping and saying you are really, you feel betrayed that you weren't chosen for the project. And you feel frustrated that you think you're more qualified and more equipped to lead and somebody else got chosen. And that just acknowledging might allow them to move on to other opportunities. So diagnosing what the root issue is can take a second. I would begin that one-on-one. And if it starts to take over a conversation, inserting a question and changing the direction or saying, let's talk about that later privately, can help to stop the downward spiral.
Great, thank you. We have another question here from LeMay, who says, how do you help teams to navigate consistent change, especially amidst changes where changes in structures or jobs or operating models, etc., have come into play, and teams are facing lots of uncertainty as they walk out the changes?
Happy to take this one.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
No, it's all good. So we actually did a project on change, I think towards the end of last year, because we're going through a lot of change now as well. And I think it's really about focusing on what you can control, because in change, often you can't control a lot of things. And the first thing I would say we can control is how we show up in our response to it. So building resilience and finding coping strategies to manage through the change and navigate it. I think Cloverleaf has amazing blogs on how to navigate change, how to support coping strategies, things like, mindfulness and, finding ways to identify your spheres of control versus your spheres of influence, and just finding ways to build resilience. And I think it's really about finding those coping mechanisms throughout the change that you can almost hold on as you navigate that change.
Wonderful.
I agree with you, Megan, and I think that I'm seeing consistent change there, in that question, and I think that is something that we need to tackle because when you change maybe for the first time, it becomes a bit easy because we can talk about the reason why are we are doing this change, why are we changing, why are we moving from this status quo, and what is it that we want to achieve. But when it is consistent, I think that there needs to be a language within an organization that is spoken, right, which needs to come from top down, from the leadership. Because if it doesn't come from the leadership, you're not going to get the buy-in. So I think that the underlying thing that Lome is trying to highlight there is consistency, because you must understand that when you go to a change on a regular basis, people get frustrated, and the question is, how do we get to deal or mitigate those people's frustrations, right? And one thing that one of the things, this is not one thing, you need to be able to sell the idea in the manner in which they will understand it. Number two, they also need to be able to participate or give inputs, right? And you need to be able to consider their inputs, because when you don't do that, especially when you go to changes all the time, it means that one day they will just close their ears and not listen to you. So the question is, how do you bring them on board so that they understand that the change that you want to make is necessary and that it is going to benefit them? And how can they also influence the process? Because as management, we may think that there is one side or one way of doing it. But when you listen to people, you may realize that there are other ways and means. And when you consider everything, you might even, need to change the approach so that you can accommodate everyone, even though that is not always possible. But I think, bring everyone on board is a good idea. Listening to everyone. Remember, we spoke about psychological safety, and that is what we need to do. Because if you reject, their ideas without listening to them, that is when they are going to resist it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nsiki. So we have another question from Anne Chinia. She says, to any of the panelists, what are you seeing as the greatest need around role clarity or psychological safety? Are there any tools that have been found to be helpful to use, or tools you wish you had? Don't all jump at once, ladies.
Well, I think Meg spoke to this earlier about aligning on the role clarity. I'm not sure I've ever heard of anybody over aligning, like doing it too much. I definitely, because that could just be a weekly feedback session about priorities and how to handle any roadblocks. It could be as simple as that. That's a great alignment tool. And the psychological safety is like practicing feedback and vulnerability. It is almost disappointing to say that that's what you have to do, because you have to do it. It's not it's not technology, and it's not a new process. It is being present and not knowing the answers, and allowing yourself and for that other person, allowing that to be okay.
And each team is absolutely different. So there's not a one-size-fits-all solution, unfortunately. Thank you so much, ladies. All right, we have one from Mia. She says, from your experience, what would you say is the most effective practical way to build relationships and true for 100% remote teams? So what's a practical way to build relationships for 100% remote teams, especially when new members join an existing team?
Also, I don't know.
Go for it, Storm.
Oh, thanks. I won't hold it for too long. We have one client that's totally remote, and there might be a drive down from each other, but if it can't be, well, it has to be solved virtually. And so I think just the biggest lesson learned there, and I think even so moving remotely when COVID happened, is that we know quite easily we can disconnect from the people around us, the bodies around us, and really get stuck into the work that's there for us and the space that we work in. So we often encourage as little as the touches are in terms of creating one-on-one. So with a virtual space, it is quite easy to connect, but make those virtual one-on-ones intentional about checking in within individual. Again, a bit about the personal before the business. Other things like creating or continuing the team spirit. So small chat boxes or group chats, we humanize the interactions, and it's not just business as usual, but those interactions build a lot of the trust. You're also learning from each other. You're having a quick giggle, and all of that, again, builds onto the human behind the desk or behind the screen, which really goes a long way, matter of fact. Megan, anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, no, I can completely echo with what you said. I mean, like I said earlier, trust is not scalable. So the most practical is one-on-ones. We often have what we call agendaless one-on-one chats in our space. So the idea is to show up and to talk about whatever you have on your mind. Initially, it might feel uncomfortable and you might end up talking about the weather, but it gets more and more comfortable as you progress in your relationship. And before you know it, you're talking about family, you're sitting with your dog on your lap, and you're really getting to know the person behind the screen. What we've also done is on Friday mornings with our team, we play games. So there's these online games like meme games or like Pictionary games. So it's all about remembering there's a person there, and not dehumanizing the person that's in front of you, because trust is built that way. And we need to start mimicking how we used to sit at the office with a cup of coffee on a couch or at the water cooler grabbing some water. Like, we need to create those moments virtually. Otherwise, we won't build those trusted relationships. So it takes time and it takes intentionality. That's the whole point.
Brilliant. Thanks, Megs. I'm going to wrap up, if that's all right with everyone, and I'm going to use Mornay's Bester's last question just to summarize. He says, from each panelist willing to answer, he says 1 to 3 books would you recommend on team effectiveness? I'm going to open it up to what's the best book, what's the best podcast, or what's the best article you may have read. So just opening it up, making it broader. Maybe you can just recommend something worth reading to our viewers today. Shall we start?
I'm happy to go first.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm
busy rereading this book. I got it last year and I'm obsessed. I think I'll probably end up highlighting every page in the book. So Adam Grant's Hidden Potential is such a gem. I think Adam Grant himself is an amazing industrial psychologist, and I think that he is an amazing thought leader in our space. But I think he understands human potential, and I think we're all in the human potential game. So I would highly recommend reading his book.
Brilliant. You'd like to go next, Nsiki?
I think from the coaching side, because if you want to build an effective organization, I'm just thinking about the name of the book, and I will put it on the charts. You need to be able to have interventions that are going to be able to help people to get to the level, that you want them to get to. And I know that this person, sorry, I don't have the name of the book, but this person is an advocate for the GROW model, right? And I just want the name of the person. I've forgotten about it. You have, I'm going to put it in the chat, but the GROW model is a beautiful tool that you can use in order to build organizations, people within organizations, so that they can be able to perform effectively.
Great, fantastic.
Coaching for performance. Thank you very much. There's Colleen. Thank you.
Coaching for performance. Great. Yes. Thanks, Colleen. Peggy, what's your recommendation?
I'm gonna kind of drill the psychological safety, and I've got 3 books where you are practicing doing the uncomfortable, vulnerability, and the awkward interactions where you don't know what's right. Brene Brown's Dare to Lead, Radical Candor, and or Critical Conversations.
Wonderful. Fantastic. I'm going to jump in there and throw in Wisdom of the Enneagram, just to make sure people recognize people as people and recognize the depth that goes into a person. There's a beautiful word called sonder. And the meaning of the word sonder is the realization that that person has a person passing you in the street has a very full life with dreams, aspirations, family members, conflicts, things you know nothing about. And it's such a beautiful word. So I hope you guys all take that into your teams, realize that people are full books. You're only meeting the one page of their story on any given day. They are full books, and they need to be read. So thank you so much, Megan, Nziki, Storm, and Peggy. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you to everyone who joined online. We really appreciate having you here. And yeah, we hope you join us for the next one, which will come soon. So from Yellow Seat Consulting, thank you so much, guys.